the person will like me. New hobbies, there's one thing for certain.
Due to my strong personal convictions, I wish to stress that this record in no way endorses a belief in the occult. Due to my strong personal convictions, I wish to stress that this record in no way endorses a belief in the occult. Due to my strong personal convictions, I wish to stress that this record in no way endorses a belief in the occult.
It's a terrible day for rain.
Hey everybody! Happy Tutorial Thursday. Hope everyone is doing well wherever you are out there on the internet today. It's a lovely day here in Dallas, and I am looking forward to teaching you all this very simple tutorial today. Okay, this is a really easy one. Sometimes it's really nice to have one of those extra easy tutorials in your back pocket for when you're like, oh crap, I need a gift for somebody like right now, or you know, it's 3 a.m. and I need a gift for somebody tomorrow, or I need to make something fabulous for myself for tomorrow, or 15 minutes from now, whatever. Like sometimes it's really nice to just have those in your back pocket, those projects that, I mean, this project literally is gonna take, hey Ace, is literally gonna take like 15 minutes to do tops, and that's if I talk a lot. So it's nice to have those projects in your back pocket. The one kind of hitch in the giddy up in this particular project is it does require a very specific type of wire. So if this is a type of wire that you have lying around your house, then this is a great last minute project for you. If it's not, this is definitely a wire you can get from any of your typical wire suppliers. But the type of wire that we're going to use for our project today is 10 gauge half round wires. So if you're mystified a little bit by half round wire, this giant gauge of it is a really good way to kind of see what half round wire actually looks like. And half round wire is called that because it literally is half of a cylinder. It's gauged, and this is one of the things that can be super annoying about buying wire and flat stock and things like that, is sometimes it's sized by gauge. Sometimes it's sized by millimeters, sometimes it's sized by fractional inches. So, you know, why should we settle on one particular scheme of measuring? I mean, that's just ridiculous, right? So half round wire is sold by gauges. So basically it is as wide as the gauge that it is sold as would be were it full round, but it's cut in half. So it's flat on one side, domed on the top. So this is 10 gauge half round wire. Now, could you do this project with a heavy gauge of full round wire? I believe you actually could. I don't see any reason why you couldn't, but once again, you would want it to be something heavier, like a 12 gauge or a 10 gauge. I feel like a 14 gauge might be a little flimsy in this particular project. So if you've got the wire on hand, once again, super easy, very simple project. So as far as supplies go, literally 10 gauge half round wire, it's all you need. Look, it's a halo. I know, nobody believes that, especially after last night's stream. As far as tools go, even though it's a stamping class, it's not a super tool heavy class. There are some things that, depending on whether you do metal stamping on the regular or not, you may or may not have in your workspace. So, God, get out of here. So, as far as tools go, you're going to need your wire cutters and probably a pair of chain nose pliers. You probably don't need your round nose pliers for this project, but you know, it's never a bad idea to have those around. You are going to need both a chasing hammer and a household hammer. The difference between these two hammers is your chasing hammer is a hammer that's actually purpose made for hammering wire, so it has a convex head to it so that you can hammer the wire without actually getting a tool mark from the edge of your hammer on your wire. We're actually going to be using the round side mostly today, but we'll be using the flat side a little bit. Household hammer is literally any old hammer that you pull out of your garage or tool shed. This is a little tack hammer that I love, that I got from a garage sale that my grandfather was having probably 20 years ago. I like this one because it's a really nice balance of heft, and it has a short handle so I don't have to choke up on it. But you know, finding it's one of those things. You know, we metalsmiths, we get weird about our favorite hammers and things. So you're going to need both a chasing hammer and a household hammer. You're going to need a bench block or bench block equivalent, so something upon which to hammer. You are going to need a file. If you don't have a file available, you can slum it with an emery board or some sandpaper. And then you're going to need a set of letter stamps. And I'm using basically 3mm letters, 2.5 to 3mm letter stamps today. And then well, hi, Mandy Head. I love you too. How is the world going for you? With the babies and the doctoral studies and all of that, everything, and the upcoming sprinkle and the mother-in-law. Last thing you're going to need, and once again, you can get around this, but a bracelet mandrel. It's going to be really helpful, and this, as you can see, is an oval bracelet mandrel. I'm about to take a nap. Hey, as far as things you could be about to do, I feel like about to take a nap is not the worst thing, though I'm sure you're probably sitting there thinking I have 1,000 things to do and my stupid body is making me take a nap. But on behalf of myself and I think everyone on the stream, hi Tallyfet, we support your napping, and we would like you to nap a little bit for all of us as well. So let's talk for a second about cuff sizing. Okay, so cuff sizing works better when you're not wearing 18 bracelets. So this cuff is actually a little bit, and by a little bit I mean a lot, too big for me. Okay, so when you're doing a cuff, ideally what you want is you want enough space in the cuff that your wrist, God, what is the focal distance of this camera right now? I think it's there. Yes, it is. Okay, so you want the, bye Mandy, have a good nap. So you want the gap here to be big enough that your wrist can actually theoretically come out from your cuff without it scraping, like it's totally scraped on my skin there. And especially when you're doing a stamped cuff like this, you don't want to have to bend this. You don't have to squish it around your wrist, because I guarantee you what's going to happen is it's going to crack right on one of these letters, especially if, God forbid, you pick a word that has the letter I in it. Kiss of death, totally. So it's important that you make your cuff the right size, that you don't have to squeeze it and open it up, which means that this cuff is way too big for me, because if I open it up to the point where it actually has enough of a gap where it'll go on my wrist without actually scratching me, it's just gigantic. So this is because I just cut a random length of wire when I was doing this sample. I didn't measure my own wrist or really anybody else's wrist. So what you're going to do to actually find, hi Smee, to actually find your proper cuff size is you're going to take your wrist and you're just going to take a tape around it and get a comfortable wrist size measurement. So when I say comfortable wrist, okay, I'm sorry, this camera is just, we are not getting along today, so bear with me everybody whilst I do a little bit of producing on the fly and try and make this a little bit of a better experience for both of us. Okay, for starters, does not need to be that bright on my super white skin. And actually it needs to be focused down here, because that's where I'm going to be standing. Oh goodness. Yeah, it's a happy Thursday, everybody. Oh, okay, so while I'm doing this, I have a story to tell about when I parked before the stream this morning. So, our parking lot here at the Beading Dreams is ridiculous and horrifying, and so we employees at the Beading Dreams do not park in the parking lot of our shopping center because there are too few parking spaces and too many employees who already park in the parking spaces. So, alright, we're just gonna go with that. So we park, I have an arrangement with the church down the way, and so we park at the church and walk to Beading Dreams. So yay, we get our steps in and we don't have to deal with all of the craziness of this parking lot. So the church is a very popular place for the neighborhood au pairs to take their charges to play. Cool, it's lovely. It's a lovely church. It's got a beautiful campus. So I had parked next to a car, which was parked very poorly. So the car I parked next to was parked on the very edge of the parking space. I parked centered within the parking space next to the car. And then I proceeded to start trying to order lunch for the store. And I'm sitting in my car on my phone, and all of a sudden I hear like and my brand new to me car, by the way, and all of a sudden I hear like a thunk from the back of the car, and I'm on my phone and I look over, and the car next to me has opened up their passenger side rear door and smacked into my car with it. Okay, fine, whatever. It's a parking lot, door dings happen, whatever. I continue with my lunch order, and the woman who belonged to the car knocks on my window and says, "I'm so sorry, can you move your car because I can't get the baby into my car?" So I look in my rear view mirror, and the baby's in the car seat on the ground behind my car.
Ah!
And I'm like, can you maybe move the baby so I can back up?
What the hell?
Oh, your hair looks so cute.
Thanks.
But yeah, seriously, that literally happened just 45 minutes ago.
Good golly.
Yeah. Okay, but there's a baby behind my car.
The baby.
Move the baby so I can move my car. So anyway, I don't quite remember how I got onto that, but let's get back to the project. So comfortable wrist measurement. For me, that's 6.5 inches. Is it 6.5 or is it 6? I think it's 6.5 inches. So you take your comfortable wrist measurement. I really don't remember how I got from comfortable wrist measurement to move the baby, but anyway. Oh, it's because I was telling a story while I was focusing my camera. There was actually no correlation between those two things. It's good to know I'm not that completely crazy. Also, I'm going to have to repeat the move the baby story for Heather when she gets here, because I promised her I would tell her about it. So, comfortable wrist measurement. For me, that's 6.5 inches. And then you're going to take from that comfortable wrist measurement, you're going to subtract 1/2 inch. Why do you subtract 1/2 inch, you ask? Because basically what you need to do to make a cuff bracelet that actually fits is you need to take the measurement of the wrist, you need to add an inch, and that's for wearing ease. Anybody who does sewing is familiar with ease. It's just that little bit of oh Lord, Pam, no, that is not what, no babies, no. But I did not murder anybody else's baby today, so that is definitely a good day in the life of Allison. Also, welcome to being the first non-bot to comment on our YouTube channel. Thank you, Pam. So, when are I able to increase my volume? I am. Is anybody else other than Amy having volume problems? Because I don't want to, like, blow everyone out. But yes, I can. I mean, it's the same volume I was at last night. But yeah, I can make myself louder. So, wearing ease. So you take your wrist measurement, you add a little bit for ease, basically that, you know, little bit of up and down you want, because you don't want your bracelet like welded to your wrist, and then you subtract 1.5 inches for the space that you need to go around your wrist. And for most people that's 1.5 inches. If you have a particularly thick wrist, you might want to do 1 3/4 inches. If you have a very dainty wrist, you might want to scale that back and do 1 1/4 inches. So if you're gonna go with wrist measurement plus 1 inch minus 1.5 inches, that nets out to wrist measurement minus 1/2 inch. So that's gonna be 6 inches for me. I'm gonna take my half round wire and I'm going to measure out 6 inches and cut myself a piece of wire. We're going to be filing the ends, so it doesn't really matter if you flush cut or not. That's not something you need to worry about during this tutorial. Also, remember when I said I'd be done in 15 minutes if I didn't talk a lot? So yeah, apparently I'm talky today. But we're still going to be done by 1 o'clock. So anybody who's watching this on their lunch hour, I promise I'll have you back to work on time. Please do not take a hammer to any of your coworkers. Or if you do, just don't tell them you were watching the Beading Dreams stream beforehand. I'm going to take my piece of wire that I just cut and I'm going to excavate a marker from my drawers. And I'm going to measure and mark the center. So it's a 6-inch piece of wire. That means that 3 inches is my center. Is it actually 6 inches? It's actually like 6 1/8. Of course it is. So my center is actually 3 1/16 instead of 3 because I'm not the best at measuring. Luckily my ruler has 16ths on it, so there we go. That's my center marking right there. Is that blurry, like the sound is bad, Barbara, or blurry, like the focus is bad? Okay. Unfortunately, that's because my autofocus on my camera is corrupt, so I have to set my camera to 1 focal distance. So unfortunately, whenever I take it down here, it's going to be blurry. But I will try and raise my stamping up so that it's in the focal range of my camera. All the things that you never think about when you're streaming, that you're like, it's gonna be so easy, anyone can do it. Not that I ever actually thought that, because I didn't, but God, there's just so much crap to think about. Okay, so I've got my center measured and marked. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hammer flat the center part of my wire. So this is a project that works best with a shorter word. Okay, so we're going to want to stick with, 4 to 6 letters on this one. And so, figure for 4 letters. Y'all can decide what 4-letter words you want to use. It's a noon stream, so I'm gonna pick a family-friendly one. For a 4-letter word, you're gonna want to hammer about 1 inch on center, so that means 1/2 inch from either side of your marking. If you want to do a 5-letter word or a 6-letter word, you're gonna need a little bit more than that. I'm gonna pick, I think I'm gonna do a 5-letter word. I think I'm gonna do one in honor of my stepmom, who is, oh, no worries, Barb. It is 10 gauge half round. Okay, so round on the top, flat on the bottom, and this is 10 gauge. So yeah, I think I'm gonna do one in honor of my stepmom because she's going through some stuff because her sister is having some health problems. So I'm gonna do a 5-word bracelet. I'm gonna do the word breathe. So the first thing I need to do is I need to hammer this center section flat, again, about 1 inch or a little more on center. So I'm gonna take my hammer and I'm just gonna flatten that out. Now I am not actually gonna have enough room to hammer that close to the camera, so it's gonna go down here. It's gonna get a little loud on the Beading Dreams stream for a second here, so if you need to turn my volume down, you've got 3 seconds to do that. 3, 2, 1, and here we go. Okay, so what I did here is I just flattened out my center section. So now I've got some place to stamp. I'm gonna work a little more there. Alright, and then I'm also going to, while I've got my hammer in play, I'm gonna hammer out my ends as well, still with the flat side of my chasing hammer, so that I make them into little paddles. Okay, so I've paddled out my ends. That one's a little crooked. Okay, so I have paddled out my ends. So when we're doing this, the rounded side is always going to be the top of your project. So I'm going to grab my my bracelet's in my hand. I'm going to grab my file. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do two things to these ends. First of all, I'm going to shape them a bit because you can see that I hammered a little crooked here. Second, it's a little rough on the edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my file and I'm going to simultaneously shape and kind of round out that end and also get rid of that sharp stuff. Now, if your file doesn't smooth enough to the point where it's going to be comfortable to wear, don't be afraid to grab some 320 grit sandpaper or some steel wool, but I think mine's pretty good, so I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Now I'm happy my center marking is still there after hammering. If it had disappeared, like if I had hammered it off, I would go ahead and I would remark the center, because what I want to do when I'm stamping is I want to start at the middle and then I want to go to the end of the word and then go back to the beginning. Now, what I would suggest for any student is that you write down the word that you're trying to stamp on a piece of scrap paper in front of you, because even though I know everyone out there can spell the word breathe, there's still a good chance that just because you're thinking of so many other things while you're stamping that you're gonna misspell the word. And the problem with this is there's no eraser. Okay, there's no going back on this. Your best, like the best approximation of erasing you can do, and it really doesn't usually work so well, is you could take and you can actually see I did sort of do it here, and you can see I still have a ghost of that. Is you can take sandpaper and you can sand that down. You can see I have a ghost of an L too. Wow, you can tell I made this sample in a hurry. So you can basically sand it down, but the thing is, in order to actually make the letter disappear, you literally have to sand down to the bottom of the impression. If you look at the thickness of my wire versus the depth of my impression, like if I were actually to sand that letter completely away, if I were to literally erase it in the only way that's possible, there'd be practically no wire left there. So this is one of those, just, you know, you got to go all in and hope you don't make any mistakes. There are a couple things you can do, of course, to help yourself be prevented from making mistakes. One of them is one that I'm not doing, which is write the word on a piece of paper, have it in front of you. That way you're not actually necessarily trying to process the word in your head, but you're literally just following the pattern that you wrote on the paper. Number two, make sure that you always look at your stamps. Look at the head of your stamps before you pick them up and use them, because I've got all my stamps labeled by letter, but my stamps are used here at the Beading Dreams by a lot of different people. I mean, not so much now that we're not teaching classes, but still, students, staff members, back when I was teaching summer camps, children. Like, you don't just grab the letter because that's what it says on the box and mash it into your metal. Like, always just do an actual also, I just realized that breathe is not 5 letters, so thank you all who let me slide on that, but yeah. Breath isn't even 6 letters. So anyway, now I'm going to go ahead and write that word down, because obviously I'm not going to be able to hold that in my head. So B-R-E-A-T-H-E. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Yes, that is in fact 7 letters. Okay, so I found the center of it, which is the A. So I'm going to find my A. I'm going to take it out of my stamping block and I'm going to look at it. I'm going to make sure it says A on it, which it actually does. Number 2, as far as just things that you can do to make sure that you don't screw this up, and by you I mean me. Every stamp, generally speaking, that you work with is going to have some kind of indicator as to what is the front of the stamp, meaning if you hold this towards you, your letter is going to be right side up. In this case, you've got a little thumb divot for holding and you've got the letter printed on the stamp. Some other stamp sets will have just like branding on the front of it, but either way, you just need to figure out, you know, what's the front of your stamp. Again, usually that will be indicated by some kind of printing or etching. That's what you need to hold towards you in order for your letter to be right side up. So I'm going to take my wire, it's on my bench block, I've got my letter, and I'm going to line that up right over my center mark, and I'm actually going to have to move this off camera. I'm so sorry because there's no room for me to actually swing my hammer and not smack my camera. So I'm taking now my household hammer. Okay, this is my little tack hammer. I don't have a lot of room here, so I want to make sure that I've got that letter lined up nicely on my metal. I'm holding at the base of my stamp, and I'm going to get one good blow. Okay, could be better, could be worse. Alright, so there's my A. Yes, it's a little bit off. This I find is one of the harder stamping projects to do because it's not really flat. This is just a household hammer, Amy. This particular hammer is, alright, T is my next letter, is one I literally got from a garage sale that my grandparents were having like 20 years ago. The other thing about hammering, oh my gosh, wow, it's just not a good day for me in the hammering. But the other thing I do find with hammering is sometimes I have to warm up, meaning sometimes it's a helpful thing to just do a little practice hammering before on something that's just scrap metal, because the positioning and the hitting of the hammer and everything is something that doesn't always stick with me personally. So what that usually manifests as, if you're the same kind of person as I am, is when you get to, you know, you're stamping a word and say your first couple letters are absolutely terrible, and then you get to your, you know, last couple letters and everything is hunky-dory. So it's just one of those, sometimes a warm-up is not a bad idea. I feel like I should have done that before this. Okay, R and then B. Because you will notice when I show you this that my first 2 letters are terrible and the rest of my letters are fine. So once again, warm-ups are not just for ballerinas, people, but I do have something that at least vaguely says the word breathe on it. The A and the T are a little wonky, but you know, it is what it is. So I've got my center section done, I've got my ends done. Now I'm going to grab my bracelet mandrel. Here's where you got to be careful. Okay, so I'm going to bend this around my bracelet mandrel. Make sure when you bend it that you are holding down that section that you hammered, because otherwise what's going to happen is it's going to crease right along one of these letters and your wire may even break. So you really want to make sure you're holding that to the mandrel and then bring your ends around. And then if you need to, you can also grab a rawhide mallet, and if you've gotten a crease in the middle like I did despite my best efforts, see that there, see that little bump? So what I can do is I can take this, I can hold it against my mandrel, and I can pound it flat with my hammer. It's also going to help with work hardening a little bit, and then I can also go to the back and take my 2 ends that are kind of sticking up off my mandrel, and I can pound those flat with my rawhide mallet as well. The reason I'm using a rawhide mallet instead of a hammer is because it'll allow me to shape the metal without adding texture to it. Now if I did want to add texture, I could put this back on my mandrel, hold it closed, and take the round side of my chasing hammer, and I could texture these little bits around my word. Like so. And that just gives it a little bit of an interesting kind of look. If you're not thrilled with the shape of your cuff bracelet, after you have shaped it on your mandrel, you can always take your chain nose pliers and you can just adjust that shape however you want. And then we want to make sure we've got that opening that we need. And then the last thing, if you want to add some darkness to your letters to make them easier to read, you can do that in a number of ways, but the easiest way that I found is actually to take a Sharpie. Make sure said Sharpie is actually writing, and color in your letters with the Sharpie. And when you do this, you need to make sure that you actually are coloring in all of the letter, because see how this one, you've got light in the shape of the letter? That means that you're not actually getting ink all the way to the bottom. That means that this isn't going to work. So you need to make sure you color everything in. You can be as messy as you want. And once you colored in your letters, you can find some rubbing alcohol. I don't have any rubbing alcohol. Oh wait, there's some in there. Rubbing alcohol evaporated, which alcohol is wont to do. So you're going to take some rubbing alcohol. The higher the concentration, ouch, the better. You're just going to spritz some on a paper towel and just use that to rub the surface of your piece. And what that's going to do, it's going to leave that Sharpie in your letters. It's going to take it off the surface, and that's going to make it a lot easier to read. And so that's it. I talked a lot, I told stories, and we still finished before 1 p.m. So that's our super simple project, which incidentally is called Simple Stamped Cuff. Thank you all so much for hanging out on the lunchtime stream with us at the Beading Dreams today. I hope everyone has a fantastic rest of your Thursday, and we'll be back on this channel, twitch.tv/beadingdream with Torch Thursday this evening. I am making a new ring for y'all tonight. Thank you, Snee. So yeah, new tutorial tonight with 4 tube settings, which sound similar but are completely different animals. So, quadruple tube set ring tonight at 6 p.m. with fire. Should be lots of fun. So everyone have a great Thursday, and we'll see y'all back on this channel, twitch.tv/beadingdream this evening at 6.
You were supposed to be helping me.
Got some new fillers on my feet, I ain't smoked in a week. Packed up the Pontiac and drove on to my dream. I left you back home if you didn't agree. No time to talk now, cause you wouldn't believe. Why am I still wearing jeans? It's like 1,000,000 degrees. I wasn't ready for the scorcher Texas summer heat. Now I got places to